Welcome to Antitrust Code by Concurrences. Concurrences is the leading antitrust database with over 30,000 articles on competition law. Concurrences is also the largest network of antitrust experts, with lawyers, economists, enforcers, and academics in 85 countries. By listening to this podcast, you will learn the fundamentals of competition law and hear about the latest antitrust news, thanks to our guests, the best experts in the antitrust world.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Concurrence podcast, the first podcast of year 2024. I am Fayrouze Masmi-Dazi, a lawyer at Dazi Avocats, and I have the pleasure of welcoming Mr. Yann Guthmann, who is head of the Digital Economy Unit at the French Competition Authority. Hello, Yann.
Hello, Fayrouze.
Thank you for being here for the discussion that we will undertake on this incredibly hot topic of artificial intelligence and antitrust. Of course, artificial intelligence is not a new technology. It has been under development since the 50s, I understand. But of course, the massification and industrialization of artificial intelligence tool, conversational bots has been accelerated since 1 year, since the release of ChatGPT. So it's taking a lot of importance in the current, not only antitrust debate, but of course political debate at worldwide level. It's reshuffling the cards of the digital economy, the equilibrium that we knew on the internet and the platform economy. And of course, the French Competition Authority is having her word in this debate. President Curry mentioned already last year at the ICN conference that it was a hot topic on which the Competition Authority will be working with jointly, of course, with the other G7 counterparts and other competition authorities. In Europe, we had this very controversial debate about regulation over the last month. We are at the final steps of the negotiations of the AI Act, and most of the debate for the time being is about transparency, obligation, and the extent to which we have to regulate or not to preserve the balance with innovation and enable the emergence of startups and an ecosystem of companies, European companies in artificial intelligence. The market structure that underlies the artificial intelligence right now is quite known from the competition authorities. Big tech players having the keys of the industrialization of this technology, and a multitude of startups working on it, working on products or services based on this. You, Yann, have a particular interesting point of view to share with us regarding regarding this type of structure. You have been working a lot on the cloud markets, having been heading the sector inquiry into the cloud. So maybe you could tell us a word on this, and before leaving the floor to you, a last word. President Curry recently pre-announced the possible launch of a sector inquiry into AI in France. We would be very curious to know a bit more about this to the extent possible.
Thank you, Fayrouze. Quite an introduction, I must say. So I'm Yann. I'm the head of a digital economy unit, like you mentioned, at the French Competition Authority, and my unit was created in September 2020. So we're quite a new unit. We're four, myself included, my deputy head, Elodie, who is a lawyer, and two data scientists, Adrien and Quentin. And like you said, I piloted the cloud sector inquiry. It took us 8 months, and it was released last year in June, and we analyzed the whole cloud sector, mainly in France, because we have a French competition authority. And it was very key because now we see that the cloud sector is one key infrastructure to the AI, especially on the computing power part. Yes.
Right. Yes.
And so, like you mentioned, Benoit Curie pre-announced a launch of a study. That's right. I was quite surprised because usually we announce it directly. We don't do a pre-announce, but I think the official launch will be at the beginning of February. I cannot speak about the details, but it should be a quick study because AI is evolving very quickly. And so we don't have the luxury to spend 18 months like the cloud sector increase. So I expect that the result will be shown before summer. So very fast one.
Excellent, very interesting. The competition authority has indeed a very value-added approach to market studies. I'm thinking about online advertising. It was a pioneer in understanding the functioning of these markets. So one could expect to find in such study the keys to understand how this market is getting structured. I assume.
Yes, at least some keys, because as you've mentioned it, a lot of authorities are investigating this subject. And so why so many authorities? Because, like you mentioned, AI is evolving crazy quick. So we need to do quick study. And if you want to do quick study, we cannot do an in-depth analysis. We need to focus on some specific relevant topics inside AI, and some will be left behind. And so with many authorities, we can complement each other. And so that's, I hope, for example, the CMA was pioneer in its AI study, and it focused more on the models, and it was very key to understand how these foundation models work. And it's very important for a competition world, but for the whole world. Like Bill Gates said on his blog, that in his lifetime, he has seen 2 demonstrations of technology that struck him as revolutionary. One is AI, and the other, I was very puzzled by it, but it makes sense, is graphical user interface.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
So around 40 years between the 2 innovations. Yeah. And regarding AI, on his blog, he said, I quote, the development of AI is as fundamental as the creation of the microprocessor, the personal computer, the internet, and the mobile phone. It will change the way people work, learn, travel, get healthcare, and communicate with each other. Entire industries will reorient around it. Businesses will distinguish themselves by how well they use it. So, quite a huge
challenge, yeah.
So I think it's worth that competition authority invest on this subject, and there's many things to look at. So I won't spoil what the future opinion will be about, but around the many subjects of interest, for example, how will the model evolve? What will be the innovation regarding foundation model? Can we take for granted the diversity of models we currently observe between proprietary or open source model? There's all the questions regarding the input upstream needed for these models. On one part, you have computing power with huge cost associated and a very special place for specific digital giants regarding the cloud sector. In our study, we highlight the very specific position, for example, the 3 hyperscalers. And among those 3 hyperscalers, Google and Microsoft, via OpenAI, a lot of them regard them as the leaders for the AI. So worry, we could say. Nothing anti-competitive, but we need to look at it.
Yeah.
And then there's all the question regarding the data needed for this model, because you need a lot of data. Much more data. And there's competition issues regarding data. There's also other law issues, mainly copyright, for example. And then you also have all the question regarding the downstream markets. Where will AI be deployed? For example, how will it be how will it affect different markets? For example, when ChatGPT 3.5 was released in November 2022, I think many predict that it will change the search market, for example, and that Google could lose its dominant position in this. So
that was at least an expectation from Microsoft.
It was. At the moment, it's untrue, but you never know, and you don't know which market will be shaping by AI.
Yeah.
But will it upset a lot of dominant position? Only the future will tell us.
That's a very interesting point. It makes me think of a class action that was actually filed in the US against Google recently regarding an AI-powered mechanism in the search. So on both sides, I don't know if it's we can observe right now whether ChatGPT is more competitive than what Google is trying to do in its own search browser. But yes. So what's also interesting in what you're saying is you are enlightening the two aspects at least of how AI might be used downstream. There is one way which could be AI used as part of an existing service, which is boosting the service and making it more competitive or performant. And AI being also, because it's a second case, a service in itself, and it may be also a platform service somehow. With now we can create GPTs directly, which are very similar to apps somehow. So it's also a matter of interest for app stores and the way these markets may be affected or not.
Yes, at the moment there's so many possibilities that it's very interesting. Like you say, ChatGPT is going like a platform model with a GPT store where you can customize your own GPT. That sounds very weird, but we'll see how it will evolve in the future.
I tried it actually. It's not very self-correcting.
Yeah, it's very weird because GPT-4 is very good in itself, and so now I'm a user of ChatGPT, for example, and don't see the true value from personalized GPT when I compare with GPT-4, but maybe in the future. You have, for example, Google, whose his main product in generative AI is Bard, and closely proprietary, not a platform. Yet, maybe.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you have all this ecosystem that is linked to open source model, mainly pioneered by Meta or Mistral, for example, that release their models on open source basis. And so it enables a lot of startups to just take these models, fine-tune it, and now it's a service.
Yeah.
And so there's a blossoming creativity regarding AI startup, and this diversity of model, I think, is very key to ensure that we have a whole range of benefits to the consumer and to innovation.
Great. Now let's turn to the problems. To some of the concerns, at least. In terms of models, but maybe more generally, there is a growing interest from several market players into standard setting. So we have in Europe and in France in particular a decisional practice regarding how standard setting can be implemented, promoted among or within associations and professional organizations. There is maybe a big stake in here in terms of how the standards may be set and by who, since we observe at least now that, as you were saying, that there are 3 or 4 maybe very structural players who can develop AI or make others develop AI. So is it an area where the competition authority could have a look, or is it something? less
I think
prioritized?
authority will look at it, but I think it's less of a priority. I'm speaking more from a technical point of view than a lawyer point of view, because as you may know, I'm a microeconomist by background. I'm not a lawyer. But at this stage of AI development, it does seem to me that innovation is everywhere. You have a striking innovation, especially in the foundation model. And so they're still innovating, and usually standards appear after innovation kind of slow down, you know. And now, every week, there's a new innovation regarding foundation model. At the time of the recording, the last innovation I've read is a paper research by DeepMind AI that they train a model to solve geometry. And it's very interesting because it combines two parts of AI, the LLM, now the large language model that we're all familiar with, even if we don't understand how it works in details, but mainly LLM works by probability inference, and so it's kind of intuitive reasoning. And what's very striking for this paper I've read, and what I understand, of course, is that they added a kind of symbol manipulation part, and so it's mimic a reasoning by humans, and so it can explain how it came to the solution. And so it could be a huge innovation, maybe, because now when you have an answer by LLM, at the moment it cannot explain how it came to the answer, but with this, they hope that it will be able to explain to a human how the answer came. And so there's so much innovation that I think the questions of standard is too soon.
Okay, in the cycle of innovation.
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Okay.
And I think if we do comparison with what happened in other sectors, I think some standard may emerge naturally. And at this moment, maybe a competition authority will need to look at it.
Okay.
But now, I think if we were to impose standard, it could stifle innovation.
And what if the standard is imposed by the power of 1 or 2 or 3 players?
But we're speaking theory.
Yes, completely.
I must say.
It may be 10, I mean.
Yeah, it may be the case or not, but sometimes, more often than not, standards can emerge naturally. You know, something is better than all the other solutions. So you have a standard. After that, maybe you need just to make sure that the standard can be accessed, there's enough documentation, and so on and so on. And for example, in our cloud sector inquiry, we highlight the position of the S3 standard that was emerged naturally by Amazon, who was the leader of the sector. And on the other hand, if a standard is imposed by a dominant player that chooses his dominant position, it could be an anti-competitive practice.
In theory.
It could be.
Okay, let's move on to another aspect of AI, which is, I would say, merger control. Over the last, let's say, 20 years, we do not have had a lot of interest into mergers arising from contractual relationships or commercial relationships. Now, Microsoft and OpenAI and their partnership and the way it evolves also has raised attention, and several antitrust authorities are now investigating whether this partnership in particular, with these exclusivities, with the kind of control some may say Microsoft exerts into OpenAI, may qualify as a merger and be reportable or to the CMA or to the Bundeskartellamt.
Or to the Commission.
Or to the Commission, of course, and it raises also the point of whether this transaction, if qualified as a merger, could have been reported to the Commission based on Article 22 of the EUMR, which is precisely a tool for catching transactions which are below threshold. So this is an area. A new area of interest for competition authority. Is it an area of interest for the French competition authority, similarly as others, in terms of does the authority intend, or may the authority review somehow some of the partnerships in artificial intelligence?
I cannot speak about it specifically, but what I can say is that from an outsider perspective, there's a lot of frenzy in the startup field, and nowadays it seems that all startups are about AI, and so
it's true. Everyone does AI.
If you're not launching an AI startup, what are you doing with your life? Seems so. A lot of AI startups, and we need to be realistic. When someone launches a startup, they usually hope for two things: either to become a successful and established firm, but not very frequent, but it exists. And for example, Google, Amazon, or Meta, once upon a time were startups.
Yeah.
We tend to forget it. But more often than not, the aim is to be bought by an already existing player. And that's part of the deal. And so now I observe there's a lot of AI startup. A lot will be bought. A lot will be under the thresholds. And so I think if we follow this logic that yes, we could see Article 22 be used in the future regarding some AI startup, but in each case, it will need a case-by-case analysis. And so it will depend. I cannot speak.
No. But it's definitely a tool that may be used, and of course, not all transactions may be of interest or harming competition somehow. But
it can be very hard to analyze which startup is key to maybe upsetting relevant market, for example. It's very hard to predict.
It's maybe up to the market players to signal something to the competition authorities. Basically, I don't think you have a kind of monitoring tool.
Maybe with AI.
Yes, you might develop this at the authority. We will come to that. Okay, well, this makes a great transition to the articulation of antitrust and the DMA, but more generally regulation. And I'm talking about DMA because there is this mechanism of information by those gatekeeper, designated gatekeeper of all the transactions they're undertaking. So it might be a way to get information about which transaction may harm what. But more generally, what is your view of the articulation between antitrust rules and the regulation, DMA, DSA, and the AI Act, which preserves competition law, its room, independent and autonomous from the implementation of the regulation? What is your take on this?
Hard question, I think. Regarding the DMA, it's a fixed set of obligations regarding a fixed set of CPS. So you have two cases. Either AI is within a CPS, and so it would be printed by the DMA if it's in a CPS or connection with a CPS. And so in these particular cases, I think it will be printed by the DMA.
Oh.
It should be, I think.
It might be, at least.
Or it might be. But the search market, for example, is a good example because search is Google search is one of the 22 CPS, for example. And so the use of AI in search is within the scope of the DMA. But in other area, since we have a fixed set of CPS, everything that is not a CPS is within the scope, you could say, of competition law. And that's all the things that people are talking about is DMA will focus, it's my personal opinion.
Okay.
I must say, but more on the kind of a present on the fixed CPS, and competition law will tackle all these new problems emerging from new technologies and so.
Yes, so AI would be, if I understand you well, AI might be included in each and every CPS as they stand. Because the DMA is focused not on the technology, on the mean, but on the service that is provided. But somehow, everything that is outside of the CPS could be excluded and go back to antitrust. But within these CPS, there are also very limited obligations that are tackled by the DMA. So somehow, when it comes to other kind of practices, this might remain outside the scope of the DMA, wouldn't it?
Maybe, but you say the obligations are limited, but I think they cover a very wide scope. So I don't know in theory what is not covered by the obligation of the DMA. So we will see. Yeah. Competition was able to tackle a lot of challenges without the DMA because at the time it did not exist. Yeah. and there will be a close cooperation between the Commission and the NCA regarding DMA and the articulation with competition law, for example. I think we talk a lot with our counterparts from NCA, from the Commission. For example, at the authority, we organize an internal workshop regarding how we will approach the DMA. And for this workshop, we invited some people from the Commission. So there's a lot of talks. I cannot tell you what we talk about.
No, that's fine.
But we talk a lot.
Okay.
We talk among the ACN also. And so there's a lot of talks to
coordinate
consistently, be sure that it is a success, the DMA and competition law. So that's what I can say. And maybe a general point regarding the articulation between regulation and competition. Maybe because there's a lot of legislative process regarding the AI Act in Europe, but not only in the whole world, there's a lot of initiative, mainly no, everywhere. Yeah. Not many in the West. There's in US, but in other countries, so everywhere. And I just want to speak about generalities, for example, because I'm a microeconomist by background, and in my lessons, we learned that competition alone, a lot of time does a terrific job at maximizing the welfare. But in some corner cases, it cannot do it alone. And mainly, it's when there are negative externalities, like pollution, for example. And so, in this case, you need regulation, because otherwise, the outcome for the whole is not good. And in this case, you have usually two solutions. Either these externalities can be internalized by the private actors, via taxes, for example, you put taxes on pollution, or when some comportments, I don't know if... Behaviors, thank you. Some behaviors can be banned or strictly controlled. So that's mainly the two big options you have. And for AI, no one denies that there are risks associated with it, but we see a huge diversity of opinion regarding the seriousness of this risk, ranging from science fiction-like risk, it's the end of the world, the doom of humanity, to there's nothing to worry about, just go on. Leave it. And it's very hard to say where are we on this scale to nothing to existential crisis, I'm not an expert on this matter, I think few are, but what I'm saying is that regulation usually comes with a cost. That could be less competition. You impose regulation at the detriment of competition, and so you need to be sure that what you impose are strictly necessary. Regarding the cost to competition. And regarding AI, the regulation of AI, there's a tendency that want to impose strict regulation, and it could put more burden on open source model regarding proprietary ones. And I'm not saying that open source is better than proprietary. I think it's good to have choices, to have the option between proprietary and open source model. And so we need to make sure, regulation need to make sure that when it puts more burden on open source, it's strictly necessary. Otherwise, we could see an AI file with only proprietary solution. So something to keep in mind for our regulators.
Yes, and as we speak, they are finalizing the AI Act, so and maybe at the time the podcast will be released, it will be still time for them to hear you say that.
Yeah, maybe you cannot strike the perfect regulation from the first draft, so
Yes.
you need to iterate. That's what is important.
Exactly, and the GDPR was one example. We tried to regulate in what we considered a balanced way, privacy and market functioning, and it turns out 5 years after implementation that it might need to be refreshed. So it might be the same for AI, and even earlier than 5 years.
Yeah. What's important is to keep an open mind and maybe sometimes recognize that in the past we made mistakes, but we can correct it.
Yes, definitely. And in addition, that antitrust in this regard is very flexible. And my understanding, or my opinion, I would say, is that we don't need to change the rules to make it cope with the challenges of this new cycle of innovation. There are many ways we can tackle some of the issues that are raised, and the combination of regulation and antitrust may be one right way to.
You need both.
Yeah. All right. And precisely, so we need both, and I'm coming to the last, I would say, question, but I don't want to preclude any other question I might have. But my last question is regarding enforcement tools, enforcement resources. We understand that AI might appear in the toolbox of the French Competition Authority. So it might be very interesting to hear more on this, because yes, it's very important. And in addition to that, I think one question most of market players have, at least business users of AI, is the actual capacity of a competition authority to act rapidly. So we have interim measures. It has been widely used by the French Competition Authority, quite with a lot of audacity sometimes. AI poses a multiple problem in terms of timing, because both its capacities and its harmful effect can be deployed extremely rapidly. So we can even see an AI being implemented, and in a few months it harms a whole ecosystem of companies. So there is also a problem of burden of proof, of capacity to build a case. In terms of timing, there is also a challenge on this. So how does AI how AI will be included in your functioning and enforcement tool?
Yes, each case is a challenge,
That's right.
I must say. Regarding interim measure, you're right to say that at the French Competition Authority, we use it. Our last example was last May, so it's quite recent, and it was regarding online ad verification in the Meta ecosystem. And it only took us 7 months to issue interim measures, so it's a good delay.
Yes, it is.
And with quite a small team, I must say, because there were 3 case handlers on the case from the unit of Pascal Deschamps, and they were assisted by 1 person from the economic service and 1 person from my team.
Oh.
And so it was regarding what support we provided, it was to better understand how the sector worked on the technical aspect, because Meta is a closed ecosystem, a walled garden. There was differences between what you can do in online ad verification between open display and the ecosystem, and it was very key to be able to challenge what was said by the different actors regarding this case. And I think it was very key to do this interim measure in only 7 months. So it's very good. And regarding maybe more generally about data unit in competition authority, we can see in Europe, but also worldwide, that data units are created within the competition authority, because it can help us accelerate our procedure or cases. And at the French competition, for example, we automated a lot of things, for a lot of repetitive and boring tasks, for example, now can be automated with a simple program, nothing fancy like AI, just simple code, for example. And so case handler can gain a huge amount of time on very specific tasks. Now they just press a button almost and it's done. So they can gain a lot of time. And like Benoit Curé said, we will try playing with AI in our not a procedure, but on some tool to assist a case handler, for example. And so we have reached EtaLab, for example, with a unit within the DNUM to help us fine-tuning AI model on our publication data set. Because we release all our publication in French in a single file that is available on data.gouv.fr. So we have our data set, and now we can fine-tune the AI model on it. And for our English audience, our English resources regarding publication should be available on DataGouv at the beginning of February.
Oh.
So we did it for the French because all our publications are in French, big scoop, but we didn't translate a lot of publication for the French authority, but we have a lot of English material regarding press release, for example.
Yes.
And this will be available in one file. So could be very useful for many people around the world to do data analysis and to power some very specific AI law tool, for example.
Wow, very interesting. That's a good project.
So we publish a lot of things on open source materials, and we hope that the people will take it and do some amazing things with it.
Okay. I think
we've covered all the questions.
Exactly. So I don't know if you had one last word you would like to say.
AI is evolving crazy quick, and I hope that what we've talked about, a lot of will still be true in 6 months.
Let's hope so.
Risk.
It's up to Concurrence to publish it very quickly.
Yeah, be kind with us if you listen to this podcast in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
Maybe something we've said will be proved false now, but we try to do our best.
Thank you very much, Yann Guthmann, for this very interesting exchange. I hope you had a great time and you listened and you discovered new things about what the French Competition Authority is preparing. Thank you very much to the Concurrence Review and to We Are, which is the studio where we record this podcast. Thank you very much.
You listened to an episode of Antitrust Code by Concurrences. If you want to read more about this topic, check the Concurrences website, where you can find all relevant articles. Follow us on Twitter @CompetitionLaws and join the Concurrences group on LinkedIn to receive updates on our next podcast.